So we're on the final stretch. I hope all of you have been enjoying this as much as I have, particularly seeing everyone. It's just been fantastic. And so now is our community updates session. And to start off with, and I think it's an appropriate start, we have a talk by Dr. Amy Fagan, who is the chair of LEAG. And I want to say that we, Survey, and then back to the NLSI days, have a very long and fruitful relationship with LEAG. I consider them partners. We walked hand in hand through a number of challenges and opportunities over the years. And Amy is the best. She's been just a fantastic chair. We're all very fortunate to have her in this position. So Amy, please go ahead.
Thank you, Greg. Are you and Christina going to yell at me when I start running out of time?
We are, gently.
Just want to make sure.
Okay.
Well, thank you for the introduction, Greg. You made me blush. For those of you who may not be aware of what the Lunar Exploration Analysis Group is, it's a community-based organization founded in 2004. It's chartered by NASA to provide analysis for whatever NASA may need in terms of lunar exploration. So it could be things related to science or commerce or technology. And so we're kind of the go-to group for that. We are interdisciplinary. So we have scientists, we have engineers, we have representatives from commercial companies, we have academics, we have people from the government. Really everyone is welcome. Next slide, please. Is it advancing for y'all? It's still on the main slide for me. There we go. Thank you. All right. One of the things that LEAG does as an analysis group is that we have specific action teams. And these are the ways that we can provide analysis for NASA. Throughout 2022, we've had 2 specific action teams, one related to Artemis analog objectives. This one was requested by NASA. We can have SATs that are not requested by NASA, which we'll talk about in just a minute. But this one was requested by the Planetary Science Division. And the rationale behind it was that there is a need for understanding what do we need, what objectives are there from all the stakeholders in human analog activities to be able to prepare for the lunar surface and for extravehicular activities on the lunar surface. And so that's what this specific action team was looking into. And so they prioritized objectives for science and science ops, things that we can do through analog activities. Specifically, they prioritized things. Was it required for a mission? Was it enabling for a mission? Did it enhance a mission? And they also looked at time criticality. Are these things that had to be done for the first crewed surface mission, or can it wait for later? So some examples of this, things that they looked at were science support room structure and integration. They looked at software needs, tools. It really kind of ran the whole gamut. And as we heard from Sarah Noble earlier in the forum, this document is actively being used. So this was published in February 2022, and you can get it on the LEAG website, which you can see up the top. Next slide, please. The next specific action team that we have stood up is the Continuous Lunar Orbital Capabilities Specific Action Team, or the CLOCSAT, which we'll hear about from Carly Peters next. The co-chairs of this SAT were identified in 2021, Carly Peters and Ben Greenhagen. And then in 2022 is when we really got things going with the rest of the community with a kickoff workshop in February, and then trying to find ways to really incorporate the community where we can. We started off with an open call for membership in the specific action team. We requested white papers from the community, and then the draft findings, which will be presented next, we will be requesting feedback on those draft findings as well. So we're trying to get everybody's input as much as we can. Next slide, please. We've also been responding to some RFIs, so requests for information for lunar science and exploration. So the first of the two big ones this summer was the draft objectives for Moon to Mars. And so the executive committee worked on some responses to those objectives. We submitted over 80 individual comments related to those 50 objectives to the RFI. We did have representation at the workshop from several members of the executive committee. And also at that workshop, there were other community members present. So there were representatives from academia, from the government, and from commerce and industry. So it had kind of a wide breadth of people giving input. For those objectives, as we all know, there's an international workshop going on right now. So they're continuing to get feedback. NASA's continuing to get feedback for this. And then at the annual meeting for LEAG in August, Joel Kearns will be giving us an update on where we stand with those objectives. So please make sure that you're at the LEAG annual meeting next month to hear where we stand with that. Next slide, please. Just last night, we submitted a response to an RFI from OSTP. And this one was related to the development of a strategy for US activities in cislunar space. And in this case, cislunar space includes orbit around the moon, but also lunar surface. And there were two main questions that the cislunar science and technology subcommittee asked. One was related to what research and development should be prioritized. And then the second was about technical standards. And so we submitted a response last night for both of these questions. In particular, with the technical standards, we really leaned on the Commercial Advisory Board Chair, Elizabeth Frank, for that. So hopefully we'll be seeing something coming out of OSTP about this in the near future. Next slide, please. I just tried to advance it myself and that did not work. And I can't remember, let's see. So while I'm waiting for that to come up, oh, there we go. Okay, we are also responding to the recent Decadal Survey. Recently, we had the town hall in May. This was a virtual town hall. If you did not get a chance to attend, that's okay. It's recorded and you can watch it on YouTube. During the live meeting, we had 85 participants. I checked the views since just a few minutes ago, and it's over 290 views now. So you can still go view that virtual meeting. As part of it, we had a broad overview. We had representatives from the Mercury and Moon panel, from human exploration, from the Endurance A concept, and technology. And so there were the opportunity for the community to ask questions through an online system, and then we could upvote, which is always fabulous. Quite a few questions. I've selected the two main groups where a lot of the questions fell into, but there were, of course, others. The two main groups were related to Endurance A, the mission concept, and what were the implications, particularly for New Frontiers. That group had 6 questions and 94 upvotes. So we had 85 people online, and this group got 94 upvotes. It's great. The second group that had most of the questions were about Artemis, commercial lunar payload services, and kind of a broader lunar exploration and science strategy. How are these different components working together to further human exploration and science in the solar system? So 7 questions and 77 upvotes. So those are the two main groups. But one thing that we did note as part of this town hall, and also from reading the Decadal Survey, is that it really highlights the value of lunar science and lunar exploration. The moon shows up in so many chapters in the Decadal Survey, and that was really wonderful to see. So if you haven't had a chance to read through the Decadal Survey yet, you can download it. It's just some really light bedtime reading. It's not long at all. I mean, it's only hundreds of pages long. Next slide, please. As part of the Decadal Survey, there are some findings and recommendations from the Decadal Survey that came out, and they're broadly supported and in agreement with things that LEAG has said. I don't know if y'all can see the next slide or if it's just stuck on my screen, but I'll just keep talking. So the findings that we have presented to the Planetary Advisory Council, for example, are related to a need for a development of a broad lunar strategy and exploration, lunar science and exploration strategy, and also having a clear hierarchy of who's making the science calls for Artemis. And that was presented in November 2021 to the PAC. And you can see that, there we go, thank you, that in the Decadal Survey, there is a very similar finding, okay, that there is a need for a strategic lunar program, and that SMD should have the responsibility for and authority for the development of Artemis lunar science requirements. So you can see that coordination between a very recent LEAG finding that was presented to the PAC and then what was in the Decadal Survey. So in broad agreement with the LEAG community, we should be pleased with that. Next, please. Importantly, in chapter 22 of the Decadal Survey, there is a recommendation that talks about the need for setting science goals and objectives. And so they recommend a structured approach similar to what MEPAG has been doing of how to have everything coordinate together. And they also pointed out that the prioritization of lunar science objectives should be defined by Planetary Science Division, but also using inputs from the Decadal Survey and groups representing the community, which would be LEAG. So next slide, please. So how are we responding to this? So again, there is this need for this big picture plans and authority. And so we have presented to the PAC that we are ready to support this endeavor with updates or supplements to the Lunar Exploration Roadmap, or potentially another guiding document. Next. We're going to be working on this at the annual meeting. We're going to get started at the annual meeting, working on a goals discussion. What is it going to look like? How do we want to move forward? How are we going to do priorities? The annual meeting is going to be held in person with a virtual component in August at the Applied Physics Lab. We'll also have a Decadal Survey panel there and some other topics, the usual mission updates, resources discussion, and DEIA, for example. And I also wanted to note that there is an important Artemis programmatic update on day 1. So make sure you tune in for that. Next slide. Okay, on to something completely different. So this is setting us up for the next talk, which is more specific about the continuous lunar orbital capability sat. So what's the rationale behind this? Well, we know that LRO has been very successful since 2009, even though it's a teenager. It's still giving us great information, and it's in its 5th extended mission. But what is the plan for what's next, or what is the bigger orbital strategy? There has been support for development of a strategy from several specific action teams, including Next Steps on the Moon, Advancing Science on the Moon, both from 2018, and then most recently the Lunar Critical Data Products specific action team, which is actually from 2021. So that's a typo. And that specific action team gave findings about data products and data gaps, but didn't give a path towards filling those gaps. And so that's where ClockSat is starting to come in. Next. In addition, in terms of rationale, we've had several findings from the annual meetings that have supported development of a plan for a long-term orbital strategy. In 2020, very specifically, we need a long-term strategy to meet orbital remote sensing needs, and you have to engage the community in this. In 2021, very similar finding. You have to use the community to identify and address all of our necessary remote sensing capability needs. And so we've tried to incorporate the community as much as we can in this specific action team because of these findings. Next slide, please. The principal deliveries from this report is to give us integrated findings that are going to address the issues related to orbital capabilities. Okay, and it's going to be broken down into 3 sections, which you'll hear more about in just a minute. There's why, so what is the rationale for why we need this? What, so what are the specific needs and goals? And then how, which is how are we actually going to achieve that? And this is to carry forward lunar science and exploration into the next decades. The expected areas of focus are going to be to identify the investigations that we need for future orbital missions, identify what's needed for landed science and exploration activities, where there's going to be cross-cutting commonalities between different mission directorates, and then to identify new types of measurements that are going to be enabled by modern technology. LRO is from 2009. It's a different time. You know, what else can we do now? And so those draft findings are going to be presented in the next talk. So if we go to the last slide, that's just my summary slide of, again, what LEAG has been up to. So again, we're working on specific action teams. We're responding to requests for information, supporting the Decadal Survey, and then again, reminding you of the LEAG annual meeting, which will be in August. If you are coming in person, you must register by August 9th. So please make sure you do that. And hopefully I stayed on time.
You did.
You didn't yell at me.
Thank you so much. And you did leave a couple of minutes, but we started just a couple of minutes late. So if you wouldn't mind staying on, Amy, we could then take questions at the end. So thanks so much for this update. And as always, like I said before, it's fabulous partnering with you and with LEAG.